They say Cornwall hides more than just legends of King Arthur and ancient stone circles. Some speak in hushed tones about a creature with wings wider than a man is tall, with glowing eyes that pierce the night, haunting the woods near the old Mawnan church. I never believed in any of it until I went there myself. It was a late summer evening when I first stepped into those woods. The air was heavy, almost unnaturally still, as though the entire forest was holding its breath. My friends had dared me to explore the place after hearing the rumors. Spend a night by the church, they said, laughing, and see if the Owlman finds you. I thought it was just a local ghost story, something invented to scare tourists and children. But as the sun dipped lower and the last streaks of daylight melted behind the horizon, I felt a strange weight in my chest. The trees whispered with a kind of voice that didn't belong to the wind. My torchlight flickered, and for a moment I swore I saw something move high above the branches, something massive with feathers darker than the night itself. Then came the sound. A screech not like an owl's call, not like anything I had ever heard. It was sharp, echoing, almost human in its pain. My blood froze as the cry cut through the silence, and every instinct screamed at me to leave, but I stayed. Because something inside me whispered, "You're not just being watched, you're being chosen." I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right in Mawnan. The villagers spoke in hushed voices whenever I mentioned the church, as if even uttering the place's name might draw something unwanted closer. They told me that children were the first to see it back in the 1970s, two young girls who swore that, perched high in the branches above the old church, was a creature that looked part man, part bird, with glowing red eyes and wings that stretched wider than a person was tall. They were terrified, yet strangely drawn to it, as if the Owlman wasn't just watching, but waiting. Curiosity drove me to visit the site myself. The church sat surrounded by dense woods, the kind that muffled sound and made every step echo too loud in your ears. The air felt unnaturally still, the way it does before a storm, and though it was midday, the canopy above made it seem like twilight. I remember stopping by a stone wall when I felt it, the prickling sensation of being watched. My heart raced as I scanned the trees, half expecting to find nothing. But then I saw them, two glowing red orbs staring down at me from the branches. They didn't blink, they didn't move. For a long, suffocating moment, I couldn't breathe. It was as if those eyes were burrowing into me, searching for something hidden beneath the surface of my thoughts. I tried to tell myself it was just a bird, an owl perhaps, but deep down I knew this was something else. Something older, something that shouldn't exist. And then came the sound. A screech, high-pitched and metallic, unlike anything I had ever heard before. It echoed through the forest, vibrating in my chest, freezing me where I stood. That's when I saw the outline, broad wings stretching from the shadows, feathers black as night, but a body that looked almost human. The villagers weren't exaggerating. The Owlman was real. But as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. A sudden rustle of wings, a blur of movement, and the branches above were empty once more. Yet the silence that followed was even worse than its presence. Because now I couldn't shake the thought that it hadn't fled. It was following me. I tried to convince myself that what I saw was just a trick of the light, that my imagination was feeding on old stories. But the deeper I walked into those woods, the harder it became to believe my own excuses. Every branch seemed to snap just a second too late, as though something massive was stepping exactly where I had been only moments before. The villagers had warned me that the Owlman was more than a creature, it was a presence. Some claimed that seeing it was a sign of misfortune, a dark omen that clung to you like a shadow. I didn't believe in omens until that night. When dusk fell, I stayed near the churchyard, determined to see it again. The air grew colder, sharper, and the forest around me shifted into silence. No insects, no rustle of leaves, just the heavy stillness of something waiting. That's when I heard it. Wings beating slowly overhead, strong enough to stir the air around me, though the trees above should have made flight impossible. I tilted my head back, and there it was. The Owlman perched on the ruined cross of the old church tower, its wings half unfurled like a cloak, its glowing eyes locked on me. The body was tall, almost human, but covered in feathers that shimmered like wet stone in the moonlight. Its face, I still struggle to describe it, not fully bird, not fully man, but an unsettling mix of both, as though nature had made a mistake and let it live anyway. For a moment, neither of us moved. My instinct screamed to run, but my legs refused to obey. It leaned forward, tilting its head in a way to deliberate to be animal. That was when I understood. It wasn't just watching me, it was studying me. Then the sound came again, not the screech this time, but a deep, resonant hoot that shook the ground like thunder. The walls of the church seemed to tremble, dust falling from cracks in the stone. I felt the vibration in my chest, as if the Owlman wasn't just calling out, but trying to break through into me, to leave something behind. I stumbled back, finally finding the strength to move, but the forest wasn't the same anymore. Shadows stretched where they shouldn't, paths twisted into new shapes. No matter which way I turned, I could still feel its eyes burning into me. And that's when I realized the most terrifying truth of all. The Owlman doesn't just appear in Mawnan. Once you've seen it, it follows you. I left Mawnan the next morning, or at least I tried to. The sun was bright, the birds were singing, but the weight in my chest never lifted. No matter how far I drove, the memory of those glowing eyes clung to me, sharper than any nightmare. It felt like the forest itself had sunk its claws into me. At first, I thought it was just the nerves, a lingering unease from what I'd witnessed. But then the signs began. Wherever I went, owls appeared perched on fences, rooftops, power lines. Always silent, always watching. When I tried to sleep, I would wake up at the exact same hour every night, my room filled with a cold draft as if unseen wings had stirred the air. The villagers had told me stories. They said the Owlman was not bound to the church or the woods. Once it chooses you, it never lets go. I laughed at the thought when they whispered it by candlelight, but now I wasn't laughing. Days later, I returned to my own city, miles away from Cornwall, yet the presence followed. Walking home at night, I'd catch the reflection of two glowing orbs in darkened windows. On quiet streets, I'd hear wings beating overhead, but the sky would be empty. And then came the dreams. In them, I stood back in the ruins of Mawnan Church. The cross loomed above me, broken and sharp against the moon, and there it perched. The Owlman, every time it opened its wings, the ground shook as if reality itself wanted me to fall. I'd wake drenched in sweat, but the sound of its hoot would still echo in my chest long after my eyes opened. One evening, desperate for answers, I called an old friend of mine, a folklorist who specialized in British legends. I told him everything, every detail I could remember. He was silent for a long time before finally saying, "Some say the Owlman doesn't exist at all. But others believe it isn't a creature, it's a curse. Once you've seen it, it marks you. It doesn't just haunt your nights, it changes you." I asked him what that meant, but he only gave me a warning: don't go back to Mawnan, ever. But what choice did I have? If it had already followed me this far, was there any place I could escape? The last time I saw it was the clearest of all. I was walking home under a flickering street light. The world was silent, frozen, as though time itself had been cut away. And then, out of the shadows, I saw it taller than a man, wings folded at its sides, those burning eyes locked onto mine. It didn't move. It didn't need to. I understood then. The Owlman didn't have to chase me. It had already taken root inside me. My fear was its home now. I blinked, and it was gone, but the silence remained. And I knew, with a certainty that crushed my chest, that I would never be rid of it. Some people go to Mawnan searching for the Owlman. They expect a story to take home, a thrill, a scare they can laugh about later. But if you see what I've seen, if you feel those eyes upon you, you'll understand. The Owlman doesn't just appear. It chooses. And once it does, you will never walk alone again. So I'll leave you with this warning. If you ever find yourself in Cornwall, standing in the shadow of that ancient church, do not look to the tower, and if you hear wings in the night, don't follow. Because if the Owlman is watching, it's already too late. If you want to know more legends like this, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next terrifying story.